Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I pray that everyone has had a blessed day on today, and I'd like to welcome you all to the 40th annual YMTF Luncheon. My name is Corbin Howard. I am a student here, junior student here, mass communication major, and I will be your master of ceremony for this event. Also to let you know that the program for today will go as follows. Thank you. As printed, I apologize.
My name is Karan Johnson. I'm a sophomore here at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. My major is industrial technology, and I have come forth to share with you all the meditational portion of our program. I'd like to start by sharing a biblical scripture that I'm sure we all may know and can relate to. Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. I agree. All things are possible through Christ. All things are possible through Christ. However, faith in Christ without work is obscure. Therefore, if we never act upon faith, we'll never receive the promise God has set forth for our benefit. In closing, we are all servants of the Lord. Therefore, we should act and do it so. Thank you.
My name is Jasmine Hale, and I am a senior majoring in animal science, and this is my third and last year participating in YMTF, and I have yet to regret participating. To all the consultants, we are appreciative for you all taking the time out of your busy schedules to visit our campus and inform students like myself about the laws for a successful career. And a special thank you to Dr. Angela Davis for coming here to our campus and speaking to us. So we thank you and we welcome you to the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff.
My name is Demarius Thompson. I'm a sophomore here at the university, and I'm majoring in criminal justice. And I have the honor of saying grace, so everyone please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, I ask that you please bless all of the YMTF participants today. May your glory and spirit fill their bodies, Lord. We are thankful for an enlightening learning experience. We ask that you bless this food that we are about to consume today, and that each person here today knows that this meal has been prepared in the favor and presence of God. Let the church say amen.
I pray and hope that everyone is enjoying the meal at this point in time. At this point in time, you may continue eating, but we're going to take this time to go ahead and start back up with our question and answer. So I'll take this time to please allow Mr. Kevin Blakely to the stand.
This is it's pretty informal, but we want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to participate because we are privileged to have Ms. Davis here with us. I want to make sure you all, like I say, get a chance to ask questions. So we're going to open the floor up at this time. I'm going to ask if you have a question, if you would acknowledge that by standing. We don't want anyone shouting anything out, of course. We don't want to get that informal. And I will recognize you. Say your name, what you're representing, if you're a consultant or a student, what your major and classification is, and go ahead and ask your question, all right?
I have a professor who says that activism isn't something that we do just in our young life. You know, it's a lifelong thing. So I wanted to know what do you plan to tackle next?
Wow.
And also, and I have another one too. And what do you have to? What advice do you have for the next generation of young athletes?
Well, two interesting questions. It's actually great that you asked that question because I've been asking myself what my next project should be. And there are two things that I'm really interested in right now. One is music, because I think that we don't often recognize the extent to which we are influenced, and especially in terms of social justice issues, by music. And I was just talking with a friend, a colleague who teaches sociology at UC Santa Cruz, and we were both saying just, what is today, Tuesday? Sunday afternoon, we were saying that, we really should do more work on music. He wrote a book on music many years ago and has moved on to other things. And I wrote a book on music called Blues Legacies and Black Feminisms, about the classic blues singers, Ma Rainey, Bessie Smith, and Billie Holiday. So that's one possibility. The other thing I'm really interested in is food politics. And of course, we're eating. And I just told the chef that I really liked the vegan meal he prepared for me. And so I'm actually thinking about what a mass movement might look like that could change the nature of the way food is produced and consumed in this country. And I say this, I mentioned in my talk that many people in this country are ill for no other reason than that they consume food that is responsible for diabetes and strokes and all kinds of other diseases. So how to develop a consciousness? Because oftentimes we eat without thinking, right? We eat without thinking. We eat without taking into consideration how the food itself is produced. I became a vegetarian when I was in jail many years ago, not because I knew anything about vegetarianism, but because I had gone on a hunger strike. I had fasted for 2 weeks because they kept me in solitary confinement, and I was protesting that. And when I was finally released, well, I went on the fast, and my lawyers were also in court, and I was released. I didn't know anything about coming off of a fast. And so I ate the first meal that was prepared, and it was a pork chop and a bunch of other things. And then afterwards, one of the girls who, the young women who was a prisoner there, who worked in the cafeteria, told us, she said, there were maggots in those pork chops. And they wouldn't let us throw them away. They told us we had to cook them. And so from that day on, I said, I'm a vegetarian. But I think there are a lot of things that we should become aware of. And so that's one possibility. I'll just say that when I was speaking in Montgomery, Alabama, last Black History Month, I met a group of black men who had just recently been released from long prison terms. And when they were in prison, they learned organic farming. So when they got out, they decided to bring organic farming to the community. And so they were teaching people how to grow their own food organically. And someone was actually making a film of them. So I think we need much more of that. And then what was the other question?
What advice do you have?
What advice? Oh, my advice is actually very simple. It's follow your passion. But try to imagine yourself not as an individual, but as a member of a larger community. And the work that you do, whatever it might be, activism is not something that you participate in according to a formula. Activism can be anything. It's about bringing a sense of sharing the need for justice and equality for all in everything that you do. And young people are always the most risk-taking, the most people, the most imaginative, the most creative people. So young people are the ones who always lead our movements. And I always point out that those of us who are a bit older have to learn how to follow the youth. But you have to give good leadership.
Travel to work, culture than I have. My question is, do you think that media reflects the culture or culture reflects the media?
Well, I think both of those would be the case. Media reflects culture, culture reflects media. But I think sometimes it's important to recognize that as you produce culture, as you produce music, for example, it's necessarily within a particular economic context. But you don't have to subordinate your creativity to that economic context. A very close friend of mine is a drummer. Her name is Terry Lynn Carrington, and as a matter of fact, her not her most recent album, but the one before that won a Grammy last year for Best Jazz Vocal Album. And she's been working for years and years and years. She first found drumming as a vocation when she was very young, like 5 or 6. And she's played with all of the greats. She's had a lot of trouble fitting into the categories because it was always either straight ahead jazz or fusion, and she wanted to do straight ahead jazz, she wanted to do fusion, she wanted to put a little rock in there and R&B, and so no one wanted to deal with her because they said that she did not fit into the right category. And of course her album, it was called the Mosaic Project, that has Esperanza Spalding and Diane Reeves and Jerry Allen, and as a matter of fact, it's an album of all women jazz players and singers. And so finally, the world has realized that what is really beautiful and amazing is that which eludes categorization. And her most recent album, which just came out maybe 2 weeks ago, is a thinking of Money Jungle by Duke Ellington. Duke Ellington and Max Roach and Mingus did this amazing album 50 years ago called Money Jungle. And so she did a cover of that, addressing the economic problems that we have in the 21st century, and doing some of the same tunes but adding some more of herself, and it's absolutely amazing. You should listen to it. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
A question that I have for you is, as an activist and a powerful motivator, what do you think can be done by this generation to ensure future generations do not fall under the bridge of standards provided by those in the past?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And it's one I've been thinking about, not so much in relation to the specificity of this generation, but I've been thinking about generations and how we in this country are often persuaded to think in such narrow terms. I was talking to someone not long ago about the campaign to abolish prisons as the dominant mode of punishment, and the need to create a very different kind of justice system, a justice system that isn't based on vengeance and an eye for an eye, but a justice system that's based on recreating our relations, producing better, more harmonious relations among human beings. And the person said, yeah, well, that sounds really great, but won't that take a long time? And I said, yeah, it'll probably take a very long time. And she said, well, then I'll be dead. And I said, yeah, you probably will be dead. And maybe we'll all be dead. But well, should that stop you from doing the work that you need to do now? And this is Black History Month, so I think it's important to reflect on people without whose activist contributions we would not be where we are today. And if you ask the question, well, did they stop to think, well, I'll be dead? You know, did Dr. King say, well, I'm not going to do this because I'll be dead by the time we really get equality? And so I think it's important for us to learn how to think and imagine in a more capacious framework, in a larger, broader framework, both in terms of who we are today and our communities that should not only be local, but should be international. And maybe our communities should even go further than human beings, because we need to think about all of the beings with whom we share this planet. And then also to be able to think generations in the future. So can we not do work that we know will not lead to fruition for several generations, and we may not be around? So how do we learn how to imagine in that capacious framework? And it's challenging, it's hard, because you know, we live in a society that's very individualistic. And we live in a society that demands instant solutions, right? I mean, the problem with the prison system is it's supposed to be an instant solution, because if somebody commits a crime, what you do is you just put them in prison. That's kind of like an instantaneous default solution. But you never end up getting rid of the problem that caused the person to be sent to prison in the first place. We never end up purging our societies of the violence. And prisons reproduce that violence. And our societies get more and more violent. So what would we do to truly purge our world of these horrible modes of violence? And how do we imagine, say, generations from now, that violence no longer being with us? And I'll just say, I had the really good fortune of growing up with parents who constantly urge us to think much further than the given, the present. And my mother always used to say, when we as kids would get upset about not being able to do this because black kids weren't allowed to go to the amusement park, or because we weren't allowed to go to the library. We had a small library. We weren't allowed to go into the main library. And my mother always emphasized reading, but we couldn't go to the library to get books. And so she always used to say, this is not the way things are supposed to be. And she taught us to imagine, even as we were experiencing that world of segregation, she taught us to imagine life without all of those constraints. And I think this is what we have to do. We have to, in a sense, live in the future even as we inhabit the present.
I sat back and noticed there are many young African Americans willing to just go with the flow and not expend their knowledge and credibility. How can we recapture and get the youth to become as motivated as your generation?
Well, I'll tell you a secret. When I was your age, we used to talk about all the others who were so apathetic. And we used to ask exactly the same question, but rather than have it serve as an excuse for not doing anything, we took it as a challenge to persuade those who did not want to get involved in the movement that they should. As a matter of fact, I was talking about that organizing project at UC San Diego. Remember, I was talking about Lumumba Zapata? And at first, in terms of the black students, there were 2 of us. And we decided we were going to get every single black student involved on the campus. There weren't that many, so it wasn't a huge challenge. And we did. We ended up getting every single black student involved. And sometimes it was about, okay, I'm going to befriend this person. We're going to talk. We're going to have dinner together. And we use those kinds of strategies to bring people into our movement. And then when we had only a handful of black students, because there weren't that many, we said, let's go to the black faculty. We got every single black faculty member involved. And then we said, let's go to the black workers. And we got a good number of the black workers involved. So a lot of times it's just patience. It's just using strategies that will attract, because activism is not just one thing. It's about entire lives. So as I was saying before, it's not something that is going to cause you to make sacrifices. You can find joy and pleasure in that. So you have to let people know, as opposed to simply saying, you didn't come to the meeting last night. You don't count anymore. You're not an activist. Which is what we often do. So I think that challenge that we took on 40 years ago is the same challenge that you have to take on today.
As a criminal justice major and advocate for youth, especially youth from minority youth, I was wondering, what are your views on children, especially specifically young, innocent black children being predestined to be criminals in society? How do you think we can limit, if not permanently, the number of children funneling through the cradle to prison pipeline?
Yeah, that's the question. That really is the question. And it's so complicated because it has been sometimes difficult to see how the emergence of this thing we call the prison industrial complex has penetrated our lives in so many ways. And one of those ways is how it has changed schools. How schools in poor black communities often resemble prisons. They resemble juvenile halls. And now the juvenile halls resemble maximum security prisons. And I'll tell you one of the things we can do. There are a lot of things, big and small, we can do. First of all, we have to really be conscious of that. We have to change the character of our schools. And one of the things that I personally try to do is I try to go in and talk to the kids in juvenile hall as much as possible. I live in Oakland, California. And the county juvenile hall, Alameda County Juvenile Hall, is about 10 minutes from my house. And so I say I cannot live in this community where there is this massive juvenile hall without trying to contribute something to the kids themselves. And so I go in as often as I can, and I talk, the librarian there was really great. She has a program that's about reading and writing. And if you have written any books, you get to go in and talk to the kids. So I have about 10 books, actually. So I've gone and I've discussed about 3 or 4 with them already. But I'll go in and do the rest. And it's just amazing how excited they are and how attentive they are. And I remember once I went and I asked a group of young boys who were in the maximum security section of the juvenile hall. I asked them, how many of you want to go to college? And almost every single one of them raised their hands. And then it turned out a lot of them even knew what colleges they wanted to go to. And it made me feel so sad that they were there oftentimes for just minor things. the last time I went, which was, I think, week before last, after I spoke, every single one of the boys and girls came and gave me a big hug. It was great, because these are the young boys especially. These are the boys who provoke fear in people's hearts. These are the Trayvon Martins, right? And by the way, I think this is the anniversary of his death, of his murder, a year ago. So I think that, first of all, we have to change the system. But in the process, there's so many things that have to be done. We have to change the way we think as well, because oftentimes we participate in that process of criminalization, right? We ourselves look at certain members of our community, young boys especially, as criminals or future criminals. And then the schools treat them that way. They end up going to schools where there are metal detectors. They end up going to schools where there are armed guards in the corridors. And so what do they learn? They learn how to be prisoners in school, as opposed to learning how to value knowledge. And I mean, of course I can go on and on, because this is my passion. But one of the things that I've discovered as a result of doing work around prisons for so many years is that many people never get to experience the joy of learning until they go to prison. And the ones who survive imprisonment are the ones who learn how to live the life of the mind. And they teach themselves how to read, they teach themselves how to write. And you know that if they had just been exposed to that early on, when they were children, they would never have been in a situation that would have led them into prison in the first place. So I think we have to approach it as a very complicated issue that involves schools, it involves the way our own consciousness, and it involves transforming the whole criminal justice system as well. But thank you for your work.
How do you feel that historically black colleges and universities fit into bridging the literacy gap between minorities matriculating to college and high school?
Well, HBCUs have a long history that goes back to the 1800s. When was this institution founded? 1873. And that was during the most radical period ever in the history of this country. And most people aren't even aware of that. That was the period of what W.E. Du Bois calls radical Reconstruction, up until 1877, when radical Reconstruction was overturned and the Ku Klux Klan emerged, and when all of the progressive laws were wiped out and new state constitutions were written that, in effect, reproduced slavery. And the creation of HBCUs reflected a sense of what freedom would require for people who were formerly enslaved. Oftentimes we think of the abolition of slavery only as a negative process. And we've been thinking about this a lot, right? We've seen Lincoln, yeah?
Yes.
And we should be celebrating the 150th anniversary, the sesquicentennial of the Emancipation Proclamation, but we're not. I don't even know why we're not celebrating it. It's kind of weird, isn't it? And then next year, the year after next, we should be celebrating in 2015, the sesquicentennial of the 13th Amendment, which is what the film was all about. The reason I mention the historical background is because I think that it was so clear to people that there was a connection between education and liberation, that there could be no freedom without education. And as a matter of fact, as Du Bois points out, that the whole 40 acres and a mule, people laugh about that today, but that contained this very central message that to be free, you needed more than to have your chains cut. You needed economic sustenance, but you also needed, as he pointed out, education, and you needed to be involved in the political process. And this is what was happening during those years, up till 1877. This is what was happening when the most of the HBCUs were created. And I think that history is so important. We don't realize the extent to which we live with our history. We kind of put it in the past. But as Faulkner says, the past isn't past. The past isn't dead, rather. The past isn't dead. It's not even past. And so that message of the relationship between education and liberation is the true, it is the motivating impulse of HBCUs, that we need education in order to be free. And it has a very different resonance today because there are so many people, as I pointed out, there are more black men in prison or under the control of the criminal justice system than there were enslaved in 1850. So why can't we recognize that message? I grew up with that. My mother emphasize that because she went to an HBCU, and that is what she knew, that without education nothing was possible. And that is why she taught us all how to read when we were 2 or 3, and then she taught my niece how to read. She started teaching her when she was 9 months, and there was never any question of whether we were going to college or not, although my parents did not have a lot of money. My mother was a teacher, and my father was a teacher, and then he became, he opened a gas station in Birmingham because a teacher's salary would not allow you to send 4 kids to college, right? But I think that HBCUs have this important mission today, and that is precisely it's the mission of promoting literacy in all of its aspects. And literacy is not just learning how to read words on a page. Literacy is learning how to think. Literacy is learning how to think critically. Literacy is learning how to read media, how not just to look at television and absorb it, but how to think critically about it, and how to think critically about music. But thank you for the question. I better stop here because I can keep going. Okay.
What are your thoughts and possible solutions to eliminate the school shootings such as those that happened in Connecticut and Colorado? And the next one is also, what are your thoughts on the conspiracy theorists who do not believe the shootings actually happened? They believe it was a hoax by the government.
Ooh, yeah. Wow, okay. Well, what I find really interesting is that it took so long to bring in the question of violence that has saturated so many black communities into this debate around guns. And why is it that so few people have mentioned Trayvon Martin? Of course, the Sandy Hook Elementary School was such a dramatic and horrible instance, but we should not allow that to prevent us from recognizing that that kind of violence is related, it's related to police violence, it's related to vigilante violence, it's related to the violence that our youth inflict on each other. Somehow or another, we think we can separate all of these different expressions of violence. And then, I always like to point out that we forget also that that women are the most consistent targets of violence everywhere in the world. So there's a relationship between the violence that happens in the streets, the violence that happens when a person with a mental disorder kills a bunch of people in an elementary school, and the violence that happens in intimate relations, the violence that happens in the home. And thanks to the work of feminists, we have been able to explore the ways in which those various modes of violence feed upon each other. Where do people learn that they can solve problems by using violence? Where does that come from? It's related to the violence of the prisons as well. So my suggestion is not that we simplify our vision, but that we complicate our visions and recognize that that if we didn't live in such a violent society, a society that promotes violence everywhere, in the media, I mean, all you have to do is turn on television. What do you see? There are 300 million guns in the hands of civilians in this country. That's about the same number of guns as people. And then when you count all of the guns that the police have in the military, and this doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. This is the only country that treats guns as something that everybody must have. It's very bizarre. And I was saying earlier that I had to shift perspectives because I grew up thinking of guns as self-defense. My father had guns, and my father, sometimes when we were little, he would get his gun and go outside and look around because he thought that the Ku Klux Klan had planted a bomb in the bushes. And it's true that many houses got bombed and burned by the Ku Klux Klan. And the only thing that black people had to defend themselves was arms. So he was a member of an armed patrol for many, many years that patrolled our community looking for Bull Connor's people and the Klan. But that wasn't about solving a problem. It was about trying to protect ourselves. And that was before guns became such a pandemic and before the kind of violence that we've experienced became such a pandemic. We have to start solving this. We have to start dealing with it right now. And it's going to mean dealing with not only taking guns away from civilians. And I said during the talk that I believe that we should take guns away from everybody. And you see, if you take guns away from the police and take guns away from all civilians, then we will be forced to solve our problems in a different way. My sister works, she's the executive director of an organization that promotes restorative justice in schools among youth. And so what they do is they go into schools to try to teach the kids how to resolve their problems by talking and not through violence. But you know what they have to do first before they even teach the kids that? They have to teach the teachers to stop being so punitive. Because the kids learn from the teachers that what they have to do is punish those who do things to them that they don't like. So the teachers have to develop a non-punitive approach before the kids can learn how to solve their conflicts and their issues. And what my sister does is they create healing circles. So whenever anybody has a problem that might lead to a fight, they have to sit down and bring others with them and talk through it. And it's amazing, she said, especially in middle school. It doesn't work as well in high school. It's much harder in high school because it's more entrenched. But she says the kids get it. They get it. And after a while, instead of fighting, they say, we need a circle. And they sit down and they do it themselves. It's so amazing. And if you could imagine that happening on a larger scale, and maybe even instead of war. I mean, if we had healing circles instead of war. And I think it's important to imagine a world where that might be possible, even though we may not experience it today. Okay.
We got time to field for one more question. Gentleman back.
David Tallman, Houston Center for Technology Manager. To live the life that you had, it's clearly a display of inner courage that I'm sure everybody else in the room can admire. My question is, where did that courage come from? And the sub-question is, what do you think, what advice do you give this generation to help inspire that fire?
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. And I don't think of myself as more courageous than anybody else, really. As a matter of fact, I was quite frightened and quite afraid during a lot of experiences. But I learned, and Audre Lorde, the wonderful black feminist, lesbian, warrior, mother, poet. This is how she always described herself when she was alive. She says that you have to learn how to live and work through fear. Do not allow fear to immobilize you. So it's okay to be afraid as long as you don't allow that to prevent you from acting. My strength and courage has always come from my community. And I don't think I would ever have been able to do half of the things that I've done had it not been for the support of that community, had it not been for feeling a part of that community. When I was arrested on October 13th, 1970 in New York, and they took me to the Women's House of Detention and put me into a solitary cell. I can remember being, really scared. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I was charged with 3 capital crimes. I was on a trajectory that could have led to the gas chamber. And I was in this cell alone, pondering, what was going to happen. And then I could hear very faintly these chants from people who had gathered outside of the jail, which was then located in Greenwich Village. And, they were saying, "Free Angela, free Angela." And I realized at that moment that I was not alone, that I shouldn't even be feeling that kind of solitary fear, that there were so many people who stood with me. And it turned out there were people all over this country and all over the world, in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in Latin America. And as a matter of fact, while I was in jail, in East Germany, what was then East Germany, elementary school students participated in this campaign that was called "1 Million Roses for Angela" for my birthday. So they wanted to send me 1 million roses. So what they did was they drew roses on postcards and sent them to me. And I received, at first I started receiving a few, and then I would receive like 30, 40, 50, 100, and then they started bringing in these big, big, big mail bags full of postcards like this big. I think I got over 1 million postcards, and they're now in the archives at Stanford University. But a couple of years ago, I was back in that part of Germany. I went back, and I went to Germany, rather. I mean, I had been there before, but I went there, and I talked to a number of the adults who had written those postcards as children. And they were so moved. And they were telling me that it made them feel so much larger. That when they did those postcards at children, it taught them that they were a part of something that was so much vaster in the world. And that it was instrumental in the way they developed and how they thought of themselves in the world. And who would have thought that little children in East Germany would be so moved by that? So it wasn't just about me, it was about all of those people who helped to create this amazing community of struggle. And I think that is where I have always gotten my strength. And that is why I couldn't give up. Even at times when I might have felt like, despite the fact that I was innocent, there was no way we could win. The whole U.S. government was against me. Richard Nixon called me a terrorist. Ronald Reagan had already said that I would never teach in the University of California because he had fired me then. And by the way, I did teach in the University of California. Not only that, but I was awarded a presidential chair in the University of California. So never give up. I mean, the message is, the moral of the story is that if you unite, and if you create that sense of community, then no one is ever alone. And everyone can achieve what they set out to achieve. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Williamson, and I've been called to provide you with the reflection. Now, the topic for this wonderful event was Laws for a Successful Career. The L meaning listening, the A meaning appearance, the W meaning writing, and the S meaning speaking. Day 1, Sunday, February 24th. That was the day everyone came together as strangers. We all were strangers. We got a chance to come together, talk, get to know one another, at least just a little bit, just so we can get through this event. Just enough. Monday, February 25th, classroom visits. During the classroom visits, we spoke of the laws for successful careers. Now, we covered listening, which means, you have to listen in order to obtain information. Your appearance means that you need to be well kept. Your attitude, your facial expressions, because as Mr. Pierce said, we are judged before we end up speaking. Writing, that pertains to resumes, reports, etc. Speaking. Now, speaking means that one must impact another's opportunities. Now, that means the way you speak could either hurt you or it can help you. If you can't speak proper English, there's a chance that you won't even be able to get a job. Tuesday, February 26th. That's this day. My wonderful team, which is Team 5, some of us went to First Ward, another went to Jack Roby, a few stayed behind on campus to do more classroom visits. Now, personally, I visited First Ward Learning Center today, and First Ward is an alternative school for young ladies and gentlemen. Now, basically, we talked about how to just be able to stay out of an alternative school. We provided them with information that they can use for the rest of their lives. We provided our own personal stories so that they can understand that, yes, we have on suits, we have on ties, but we've been in your same position before. I mean, I even shared my story of being in trouble as a kid. You know, so the thing is, I wanted them to understand, well, we all wanted them to understand that just because you're here now, you don't have to stay here forever. There's always room for change. Last but not least, we received information from Dr. Angela Davis. Now, what I got from her speech was, one can fight for what he or she believes with the tools of effort and patience. Now, I want to leave you with this. Remember, where there's opportunity, there's growth. And without exposure, there cannot be any experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Williamson. All right, now we will take this time to offer you any person that would like to put forth their own expressions of the event. However, we will limit you to about 1 minute.
Most of you already know me, but my name is Lafayette Woods. I'm a major at the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office and also a public information officer. This year is my first year being a part of participating in YMTF. I got the call from Ms. Jones late Friday on my way from New Orleans, and I agreed to come and help. Always good to come back and help, get some insight on a law enforcement perspective, and give back to the community, especially dealing with youth. I enjoyed my experience here, talking to everybody, visiting with the kids, and also sharing my experiences, personal experiences of where they are going and where they've been. And I look forward to next year.
Hello everyone, I'm Demarius Thompson again, a sophomore majoring in criminal justice. This experience has taught me a lot because in the beginning, initially, I've had a lot of individuals tell me pre-college that I wasn't going to amount to anything, but I proved them wrong, being the first in my immediate family to graduate from high school and being the first generation college student. While maintaining a 4.0 GPA. But what I've gained most from this experience is that, I forgot, but a famous person once said, I can't really remember his name, but the impossible is possible. And this is something that I live with, and I've learned this, and I live by it day by day. Looking at all of you faces out here and all of your successes and all of your upcoming successes, I know that anything is possible, and with God who strengthens us, we all can achieve anything. But thank you for this experience.
All right. I just wanted to stand. Your name, please. Oh, okay. Well, my name is Melvin D. Clayton, the Melvin D. Clayton, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone, all the consultants, Dr. Davis, everyone for just coming and being here with us, because this is very powerful. A lot of people, young students, don't get this. I've talked to my friends from other schools, and I thought this was something that went on everywhere, and they were, what's YMTF? What's a consultant? They come to your school. We have to look for jobs, you know. So I really appreciate it. I know everyone here on campus does. A lot of students want to participate, but I think there weren't even enough people who came this year. There were more escorts than consultants, so it's very powerful. What you're doing is not in vain. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
First, I'm very honored and humbled to be able to attend this great event. This is my first year as a part of YMTF, and I greatly enjoyed myself, and I greatly enjoyed meeting and making acquaintance with all of you. I'm very thankful to God for this opportunity as well, because I almost was not able to do this because of a family matter where my godmother had a heart attack, and I ended up missing the final meeting that basically determines whether you'll be able to be a liaison or not. In addition to that, the person I was going to be escorting was not able to come down. So kind of got a little bit discouraged, but as this event has progressed, everything has turned out to be great and wonderful, and I especially enjoyed our time at First Ward today. And the reason being is because, you know, those kids are already at a moment in such a young age, 7th through 12th grade, to where they feel like they can't make it and they can't do anything. But I had a number of students come up to me, you know, Corbin, will you mentor me? Or, once we got to a point of telling our stories and they were actually able to relate with us, you can see that sparkle come to their eyes, that little glimmer of hope come back into their minds, because you see, okay, they were just like me at one point in time. They had drugs in their family. You know, their mom wasn't always there, but they made it. So that means I can make it too. So that really put a spark in, in my heart, and it made me feel very good about this. And I will return and do this next year. And I thank you for that.
Well, I'm very happy. When students are happy and staff, faculty, then the chancellor is happy. So, Dr. Davis, we really appreciate you being here. As the interim chancellor, interim chancellors can do things and get away with it because they're not supposed to know any better. But one of the things that I did early on was to identify what I call 5 priorities for this university. One of those priorities was to develop internships and partnerships. And I'm happy because this is exactly what I had in mind. So I just want to say to the consultants, and most of all to our students, and the questions that I heard, you let me know that we're doing something right. So thank you, Dr. Davis. Thanks to Ms. Cherry and Ms. Jones and all of the staff. And I think this has been a very wonderful opportunity for our students, and just thank you for being here.
This is every year I got to say something. First of all, and most important to me, I really want you guys to recognize having the chancellor here, not just today, I've seen him multiple times throughout the program. You can say what you think of the program. You can say what you believe in, but something else to show it, okay? And I know this man's schedule is busy, and I appreciate it. I want you all to applaud him for just being a part of this, not just allowing us to do it, but being here as well. That's really important to me, and I thank you. The second thing, I want to say that I appreciate that Ms. Cherry has had to work so hard, okay? Understand what I'm saying. Her working this hard means, A, teachers want us in their classrooms, okay? So she's got a schedule to fill out. I want that schedule getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The more work she has to do, that means the more it is you're doing, okay? B, escorts. It's a lot of escorts. We don't ever have this many escorts running around here. That means students want to be involved. That means it's something that you're doing that's right. So I'm shooting my shout out to the consultants. Thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And I'm looking forward to the work that you're going to do in the future, because I'm sure you're all going to be coming back. This is the testimony that what you're doing is right. You can take something back with you. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank the university for allowing me to come back again this year. Ms. Cherry has been several years, and I really enjoy it. This is my hometown. I went to school at Dollarway High School here, and it's a pleasure and an honor for me to be here with you. What I hope that our team has had an opportunity to do this week, not only here on campus, but we went to Dollarway High School today, is to impact at least one person's life, so that person can act and not be acted upon. I think that's very important for each of us here, that we act so we're not acted upon. And I look forward to future events. I'm leaving today. Students, you're here for the rest of the year. And my charge to you is to not let YMTF go away for another year, but to stay actively engaged in teaching and training and helping students that you're with day in and day out. They need your example. And if you will put yourself out there, then you're going to impact lives here on campus. Thank you.
Well, hello everyone. I know I might have overstayed my welcome, but I'll make it as quick as possible. First and foremost, I would like to thank every single one of you for being here today. Give yourselves a round of applause. Secondly, I would really like to thank my team for showing the initiative to show up on time and just have a great time, as well as get down to business. I really like to thank Miss Susan Gregory, because she taught Serena Gregory, my bad. Nobody saw that. I really like to thank Miss Serena Gregory for helping me realize exactly the career path that I would really like to take with this. Because at first I was confused about PhDs and MDs, graduate school and medical school, but now I know. So at least she knows what I want to do, but I would really like to thank Miss Angela Davis. Really, when she really emphasized critical thinking, that is a thing that really means a lot to me. Because when she drew so many parallels to all of the KKK and the Black Panther Party and the Republicans and Democrats, all of these connections, we have to look back at history and say, are there any other connections that we should make? And there are, but they're not discovered yet. Why? Because we're not doing it.